About the State Capture Commission of Inquiry. Now, former South African Airways Board member Yakhe Kwinana has denied any wrongdoing during her tenure at the national carrier. And testifying at the State Capture Commission of Inquiry, Kwinana could not recall that she had approved a R1 billion contract with international aviation company Swissport and local partner JM Aviation. And responding to evidence leader Advocate Kate Hofmeyer, she said that she thought that they were approving only the terms and conditions and not the whole contract. And for the former board member also appeared before the commission to testify following accusations that were made by Director of SRS Aviation Sibongile Sambo earlier this year, in which she testified that Kwinana had negotiated a R100 million kickback from a U.S. company to influence a tender process. Chartered accountant and political analyst Khaya Sithole joins us now to discuss some of these developments at the Commission. And thanks for your time, Khaya. Always good to see you. Welcome to Morning Live.
Again, good morning to the viewers.
Let me just start by looking at the profession, your profession at the moment as a chartered accountant, being brought into disrepute in all sorts of ways, and not just at this Commission of Inquiry, but especially here, but also previously, as we'd seen inquiries at various state-owned entities. What is SAA and, of course, the Institute for Chartered Accountants saying about all of this?
Yeah, luckily SAA has an entire CEO whose job it is to answer the question of what it is that they're doing about it. So I can only look at it from my own perspective in that, unfortunately, just like every other profession, we do see that there's a lot of accountants that find themselves implicated in seriously dodgy matters at these particular institutions. And of course, the idea is that they should all be able to explain their story and be able to actually tell us what exactly it is that motivated them to do the things that they're being accused of. And of course, if they're found guilty, then we should be able to know what the appropriate sanctions are. So unfortunately, the problem with this particular process and also the State Capture Commission is that it's just taken way too long. I mean, we're already over 2 years of the State Capture Commission, and very few of the matters or any of the streams that even the State Capture Commission came up with have actually been finalized. So it's unfortunate that things take so long to be finalized, but I think we need to get to some conclusions.
And of course, Khaya, another interesting 2 days with former SAA board member Yakhe Kwinana at the Zondo Commission. She didn't exactly shroud herself in glory as a capable chartered accountant assisting the airline. But let's start by talking about Yakhe Kwinana, who she is and what we know about her.
So Yakhe Kwinana is actually a very accomplished business person. She actually ran an auditing company called Kwinana and Associates, which actually did manage to score a lot of lucrative contracts. And I think at some point in time, her company was seen as one of the emerging black auditing firms that a lot of people were punting for. So that's really where she really plied her trade as an auditor. And of course, at some point in time, she started getting involved in governance circles, and that's how she became a board member at South African Airways and also a board member at South African Airways Technical. So she's really someone who's been building up her profile over a particular period of time. Of course, anyone who's been listening to her over the past 2 days is then going to start asking the simple question of how on earth she ever became accomplished in anything. But let us not be blind to the fact that in this particular commission, she has gone for the plausible deniability defense, which simply means that if no one can prove anything, my answer is going to be that I didn't do it, I didn't know about it, or I didn't hear about it. And of course, you can see right through some of those particular denials that it just quite simply makes no sense. But that's a strategy that she's undertaken. And of course, it's leading people to question how on earth she ever became who we say she is.
So how intrigued or surprised have you been by all the bombshells that came out? You know, there was an admission of some forex trading without a license. Kwinana went on an overseas trip sponsored by U.S. company AAR, flown there, wined and dined, and then allegedly tried to negotiate a R100 million kickback in exchange for a contract to provide aircraft components to SAA. How intrigued were you by all of this, if at all?
No, not at all, because I think this is the one stream that I've been following religiously, and I think by the time we get to Saturday, some people will figure out why I had to follow this one religiously. But I think if you then try and look at the testimonies of the people that were already in front of the commission, whether it was Mr. Masimba Tawa, whether it was, Ms. Sambo, even Memela and Zeku, you could sort of exactly figure out what it is that the commission was going to ask Ms. Kwinana, because all you really had to do was to read the testimonies of all the people that have implicated and all the people that have mentioned her name, and you could literally work out the script of how this was going to work out. So it was quite easy to predict if you've actually gone through the transcripts of what other people have said about her. So in this one, it was, an easy one.
And if you look at all the allegations, and if those allegations, and a big if they are true, then surely these were some of the reasons for the financial collapse of SAA and SAA Technical.
There's no way anyone is ever going to argue that the things that she did or the things that she's accused of having done were helping SAA or SAA Technical in any way, because I think it really amounts to a collapse in the distinction between executive and non-executive directors. And I think that lack of distinction in where the boundaries are does lead to a collapse in governance, which is one of the reasons that has been cited for why SAA in particular has gone to the ground. So I do not think anyone's going to argue that it assisted. It's now a question of asking, well, just how damaging was her involvement? And of course, we need to test the allegations. If the allegations are indeed true, then you have to acknowledge the fact that she definitely contributed to the demise of the airline.
So just how damaging was that involvement? Because if you look at what was happening, at least from the evidence that has been led, what was happening at SAA all those years with the board allegedly entangled in issues of operations involving contracts and tender processes, just how big was the damage?
Well, the damage is articulated by the fact that last week you had to reprioritize 10.5 billion rand from serious social services in order to fund just a business rescue plan. Remember, you're not funding the revival of the airline, you're simply funding the business rescue plan. So if you think of just how much we've had to put out and how much we've had to pay in order to get SAA to be where it is today, where we're at least trying to salvage what remains of it, that is the extent of the damage. And of course, this damage has got a multiplier impact, because when SAA gets grounded, it isn't just SAA that's been grounded, it's everybody who's a supplier to SAA, it's everybody who works for entities that are part of that entire value chain. So it's a damage that is probably unquantifiable in monetary terms, but it's definitely been damaging.
One of the things that Yakhe Kwinana mentioned during her evidence was that the commission is biased, and that's the note on which it started off on Monday. And one of the allegations, one of the things she charges is that the commission is only looking at certain issues when it comes to these allegations of wrongdoing and of state capture, as it were. Is she correct in that? Should the commission be looking more widely at what happened at SAA over the years?
Well, the one thing that you have to remember is that since this commission started, I think in 2018, what Deputy Chief Justice Zondo has been asking every single member of the public is to make information available to him in relation to matters of state, matters of procurement, and matters of corruption. So from what I know, there's absolutely nothing that stopped even Ms. Kwinana herself from tabling all those other matters that she now says are actually things that are still going on. There's nothing stopping her from tabling them and saying to Mr. Zondo, please look into these ones. From my understanding of what happened on Monday morning when it started, it's something like it was the very first time that the commission was hearing about these things. And Zondo's objection to that was that, well, if you're now going to mention names that I've never heard of, it means there's someone sitting at home who doesn't know that they should be tuning in, listening into this commission because you're about to drag their name, and also having served them with a notice to say, please be aware that you're going to mention. So that was the basis for him saying you cannot do that. But if Yakhe Kwinana feels that there's something that the state should know about, if there's something that the state capture inquiry should know about, she's free to table it. We all are. So if she doesn't want to do it herself, she can pass it on to me. I'll definitely have it tabled. So it's always quite interesting when people come there and they accuse the commission of not looking at things, when the question is, well, did you table it? And on what basis did the commission say yes or no, we'll look into this, particularly if the Deputy Chief Justice has put out a call to the general public to say, tell me what do you know?
The name Coleman Andrews has come up several times, when you talk about SAA, the likes of Kwinana, the likes of Dudumieni, and those who support them would always say, why is nobody looking at what happened during his tenure at SAA and the sort of financial woes that were incurred and imposed on the airliner during that particular time? Is that valid?
You and I can ask that question. I don't know if people who were actually directors of SAA at some point in time can suddenly say that that should have been done, because the question should be put to them to say, well, you were in a prime position to actually intervene on matters involving SAA. If you now know that there was an individual by the name of Coleman Andrews who committed all these particular sins, on what basis did you not launch an action in order to recover those funds? So the question should always be put to them. Of course, the Coleman Andrews episode for me is probably something that Saki Makozoma and Jeff Hadley must always be held to account for, because they were the ones that enabled and cultivated the type of destruction that Coleman Andrews engineered at SAA. And at the end of it, they gave him a golden shake and he walked away and he went back to the United States. Now, this happened in the late 90s. The issue here is that directors who came into the SAA boardroom in 2009, in 2006, in the case of Ms. Kwinana and even Ms. Mieni, are being held to account for things that happened during the tenure. So it doesn't really get them very far to then cite what had happened in 1997 and 1998, because I do not think any part of the commission or any part of the evidence being there against them asked them, so what happened in 1995? Because we're simply not there. And of course, they would simply refuse to answer that anyway. So it's a very interesting name to raise, but it really doesn't advance our arguments either way.
So, as you said last week during the medium-term budget policy statement, the Finance Minister, Tito Mboweni, talking about that 17 billion that would go to SAA. And as you say, we are talking here about a business rescue process and debt that will be paid off with that money at such a perilous time for the country financially. So what is going to happen going forward with SAA? Because I think many people worried about that. Again, are we still continuing to throw good money after bad? Should we be walking away from this entity right now as a country and said we've done all that we can? Or have we spent so much money on it that we should just try to see it through?
Well, we can't really be asking the question of what ought to happen to SAA, because remember, SAA is not a standalone player. It's part of the global aviation chain. The bigger question here is how long will it take for global aviation to recover and for it to sort of really open up the skies to a level that enables all the pre-existing players to step back and say, I'm recapturing my market share, I can fly again. Unfortunately, if you listen to the International Association of Airlines, they are saying that just to get back to the 2019 volumes is going to take the next 4 years. So it's only at the end of 2023 where they're expecting that the same number of people that flew in 2019 will be flying. Now, that has enormous consequences for all airlines, because remember, this is still a volumes-based business. That's the first issue. The second issue, unfortunately, is that even at those 2019 levels, SAA was a company that was struggling to find its footing in a competitive market. So the bigger question is, even if the sector recovered tomorrow, if SAA is not treated or run differently from what it was before the lockdown itself, it's very unlikely to imagine that the results are going to be different. I mean, there's just no formula that says keep doing the wrong things and then expect different outcomes simply because a particular politician wishes it to be so. So there has to be a fundamental restructuring of how SAA is governed. There has to be a big issue around the question of politicians, not only just politicians, but also the proxies that they deploy in the form of board members, as you've seen in the State Capture Commission this week. So until you fix all of those things, it really is going to end up as an exercise in putting more good money after bad, because you can't do the same things the same way and expect a different outcome. It just doesn't work like that.
Khaya, we're out of time. In 30 seconds or less, Dudu Myeni is expected to appear at the State Capture Commission of Inquiry today. What should we expect?
Well, she will be appearing via Zoom because I think she's had exposure to COVID. And my view is that you're going to be even more frustrated than you've been over the past couple of days, because she's not going to yield any ground. It has to be the evidence leader and the Deputy Chief Justice trying to pry information out of her. And I believe they're going to have a very difficult day getting anything out of her.
Well, Khaya, thank you so much. Khaya Sithole is, of course, an analyst and a chartered accountant, talking to us about what has transpired at the Commission of Inquiry into allegations of state capture with aviation-related evidence being laid at the Commission this week. It is just about 7 o'clock, so let's bring you the latest news.